I mean, I don't have a family, and I definitely don't have faith.
So I guess definitely not part of the solution.
Maybe I am.
No, here's the thing.
In this episode of Real Time, Bill Maher clashes with Dr. Phil in a fiery, no-holds-barred debate over what's truly broken in America and how to fix it. Dr. Phil argues that faith and family aren't just nostalgic ideals but the moral compass and foundation of a stable society, while Maher pushes back, dismissing religion and tradition as outdated answers to modern problems. The viral moment came when Dr. Phil told Maher directly that without faith and family, he might be blind to the very solution he seeks. A point that electrified the crowd and lit up online audiences. By the end, Dr. Phil walked into Maher's house but walked out owning the room. And if you're into real debates, not safe ones, this ride is just getting started.
We disagree a lot on is that you think family and faith are a big fix to the problems we have. I mean, I don't have a family, and I definitely don't have faith.
So I guess definitely not part of the solution.
Maybe I am.
No, here's the thing. I'm just saying that you come from a family.
I come from one, true.
So don't tell me you don't have a family.
Well, they're all gone now except my sister, yes. But
So you got a sister.
okay, but I didn't start a new family, is what I'm saying. And I'm an atheist, so I don't have religion. And I think the country's moving in my direction, by the way. More people than ever are single, and more people than ever don't have a religion. Now, you may think that's a bad thing and why we're going to hell in a handcart, but maybe it's also part of the solution, and it certainly would.
Dr. Phil didn't just challenge Maher, he voiced the quiet frustration of millions who are tired of Maher's smug detachment and his tendency to treat cultural decline like a punchline. When Dr. Phil stared back in disbelief, his expression all but shouted, "Is this guy serious?" For many, that moment was more than a disagreement. It was a cultural collision. Maher as the poster boy for urban cynicism and Dr. Phil as the voice of grounded values and common sense. The reaction online was overwhelming, with viewers seeing Dr. Phil not just debating, but channeling what they've long wanted to scream through their screens. "Wake up, Bill. The world's burning, and your sarcasm isn't helping."
You say religion is the fix to this?
I didn't say
Have you
that.
seen the Middle East?
I didn't say that.
Well, yeah, you did in the book.
No, I did not.
What do you say about family and faith, not the fix?
I said that for the first time in our country's history, membership in an organized religion has dropped below 50%. Now, here's why that's a problem, because that was one of the reasons that families got together at least once a week and spent quality time together. The reason it's dropped below 50% is because the reason they usually joined the church was because they wanted to have their children christened or baptized or whatever the ceremony was in that particular church, and our birth rate has dropped to 1.6. We need 2.1 in order to sustain the infrastructure that we have. So we need immigrants. We just need to know who they are.
Very reasonable position.
I'm very pro-immigration.
The issue isn't compassion, it's mismanagement, and that's what conservatives have been shouting for years, only to be met with eye rolls and dismissals from people like Bill Maher, who keep skipping over the nuance like a scratched record stuck on repeat. The debate has never been about cruelty, it's about competence. It's about the basic, unavoidable question: how many people can a nation realistically absorb before its systems start to buckle? Schools don't have infinite capacity, hospitals can't operate on goodwill alone, housing markets can't expand overnight, job markets don't magically generate opportunities just because the border stays open. There's a breaking point, and pretending it doesn't exist isn't compassion, it's denial. And yet, whenever someone raises that perfectly reasonable point, Maher and others treat it like some sinister dog whistle, as if saying the system has limits is equivalent to bigotry. But it's not racism, and it's not fearmongering, it's logistics, it's policy, it's math. And math doesn't care about your applause lines, your studio audience, or your cynical smirk. Math is cold, math is brutal, math has no patience for posturing. By reducing border control to a culture war prop, Maher doesn't just miss the point, he insults everyone who is actually trying to grapple with this crisis like grown-ups. because practicality isn't bigotry, it's the difference between compassion and chaos. Cruelty isn't asking how a nation is supposed to function with broken borders and overwhelmed systems. Cruelty is pretending that there are no limits while forcing ordinary working families to bear the cost. The elites can shrug. They can laugh. They can afford to live in gated communities where the consequences of bad policy don't touch them. But working-class Americans, they feel the strain every day. Crowded classrooms, overloaded emergency rooms, higher rents, fewer jobs, and all the while, they're told that raising these concerns makes them villains. That's the real insult being lectured about. Morality by people who don't have to live with the fallout. Compassion without limits isn't compassion at all. It's negligence, packaged as virtue. And negligence dressed up as morality is worse than incompetence is betrayal, because it leaves communities broken, families stretched to their breaking point, and a nation slowly crumbling under the weight of policies built on optics, instead of outcomes. Until leaders admit this simple truth, that borders exist for a reason, that systems can only handle so much, that math cannot be mocked into submission, the crisis won't just stay unresolved. It will get worse, much worse. And when it does, no amount of sarcasm from Bill Maher or applause from his audience will be enough to cover the sound of collapse. 111.
Your position that you just said, very reasonable, and a political position. A political swing. But you did say in the book that the less religion we have, the more divorce and cohabitation become acceptable. And why shouldn't they be? Why shouldn't divorce and cohabitation? You sound like the Alabama Supreme Court.
No.
Why shouldn't that be acceptable? It's 2024 to just cohabitate without marriage.
Well, let me answer.
Okay.
The problem is, if you have a child and you have a non-biological male in the home, the incidence of sexual molestation and or abuse for that child goes up as much as 33 times normal. It goes up, depending on what kind of abuse you're talking about, it goes up 6 times normal, 10 times normal, all up and down the continuum. That doesn't happen if there's a biological parent in the home. But no, wait a minute, you can't.
That's a cohabitation. You're conflating two things. You can cohabitate with someone and have children. I mean, the marriage rate in, I think, Sweden is very, very low. They live together as man and wife, but they just don't get married and they have children. That's a biological father in the home. They just don't.
They don't fill out paperwork.
Cohabitation, yeah.
You're saying they don't fill out paperwork.
Correct.
But that's not what happens in a lot of situations that create this problem with a male being inside the home that is not biologically connected to the children, and that is a big issue, Bill. You can't write that.
Bill Maher has always walked the line between comic and commentator, but lately that line looks less like a balance beam and more like a brick wall, and Dr. Phil just climbed right over it. Maher has built a career out of smirks, sarcasm, and cheap applause from his coastal echo chamber, treating every serious issue like it's just another setup for a punchline. But this time, he ran into someone who wasn't there for the jokes. Dr. Phil didn't show up armed with clever one-liners or smug detachment. He came with something far more durable: values, faith, family, and structure. And he didn't pitch them as relics from a dusty past. He framed them as scaffolding, the beams holding up the house we all live in. Without them, society isn't just shaky, it's uninhabitable. What unfolded wasn't just another late-night debate, it was a cultural showdown. A mirror held up to America's fracture. The question couldn't be dodged. Are faith and family outdated traditions, or are they the only things keeping this whole experiment from falling apart? Maher did what he always does: rolled his eyes, cracked a grin, and turned bedrock principles into punchlines. But Dr. Phil didn't flinch. He cut straight through the cynicism with a warning that landed like a gavel, tossing aside the pillars of society in favor of vibes. Hashtags and viral trends isn't progress, it's collapse wearing makeup. Strip away faith and family, and you don't just lose sentiment, you lose accountability, direction, and meaning. You don't get liberation, you get drift. You don't get strength, you get fragility dressed up as freedom. And that's why this moment detonated online. People weren't just watching a spat between two TV personalities, they were watching two visions of America collide. On one side, the cynicism of elites who laugh off decay as if sarcasm were a strategy. On the other, the voice of millions who are sick of watching their culture erode while being told it's progress. When Dr. Phil stared across the table at Maher, it wasn't just one man debating another, it was a cultural intervention. You could feel the electricity in the room and see it explode across social media. The applause in the studio may have been split, but the roar online was unmistakable. Sinks. A nation that trades discipline for dopamine and principles for popularity doesn't move forward, it unravels. Dr. Phil wasn't lecturing, he was warning. And in that warning was a dare not just to Maher, but to America itself. Wake up, look in the mirror, ask yourself if tearing down the beams holding up the house makes you free, or just homeless. The country is standing on scaffolding that's cracking under the weight of neglect, and unless those pillars are reinforced, collapse isn't just possible, it's inevitable. And that's why this wasn't just a debate. It was a line in the sand. Mark and keep laughing. But Dr. Phil made sure America heard the truth. Cynicism won't save you when the foundation caves in.